afternoon, everyone. My name is Anne, your host for today's webinar. Before we start, I wanted to make sure that everything is working well. Can you please type in yes on the chat box if you can hear me okay? Okay, thank you so much for that. Thank you for the confirmation. So, um, today's session guarantees valuable insights on the developing gravitas and boosting your executive presence. In this webinar, you will learn how to develop a powerful presence, manage imposter syndrome, handle difficult person who challenge your authority, make a positive impact in any setting, and much more. And it's our the esteemed privilege to welcome you, Mr. Robert C. Scott, the General Manager of Lifespan Company Limited, as our distinguished presenter. With extensive expertise, Robert brings valuable knowledge to our discussion, and we are eagerly anticipate learning from their insights. Without further delay, I now invite you, Mr. Robert, to take the virtual stage.
Hello, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. I'm Robert Scott. I have a bit of experience in a number of areas, and this is an area that is very, very important to me because too often I see people with a lot of talent not actually optimizing the potential for themselves. And I therefore am looking at how can I help people throughout the world to improve their opportunities for growth. And so I'm very glad to have these persons here with me today. So the structure of the webinar is that I'll go through the introduction, which we've already had, go through a few definitions. I want to speak to the four pillars, which is what underscores the entire workshop. Then we look at handling difficult situation, confrontational situations, and then we have the next steps. So I want to be clear, is everyone seeing and hearing me okay? I'm going to invite you just to type yes. It's my Jamaican accent. I want to make sure that you can hear me okay. All right, fantastic. Fantastic. So we continue. So what I'd like everyone to do is to type into the chat who stands out as someone with gravitas for you and why. And we'll just take 30 seconds. Someone who stands out for you with gravitas. Yes, can I see who stands out as someone with gravitas? Please do type. Okay, I see parents. Anyone else? And why? Okay, so we will continue.
Robert, um, there's someone who answered your question.
I'm sorry, could you repeat, please?
Uh, Sushant already answered your question. So, who stands out as someone with gravitas? Her answer is parents and customers. And
Mm-hmm.
the reason why, because they want best result from us.
And that's excellent. That's an excellent point. So I want to move on quickly into persons for me who stand out as gravitas. So it's in my society here. We have Mia Motley, who is a Prime Minister of Barbados, and she's been doing a lot of things internationally. We all would know Barack Obama. We have Anthony Hopkins as a master and commander, the head of that movie. And we also have our Rear Admiral in Jamaica. A lot of times the uniforms help, but we want to really look at personal power. So let's look at a few definitions. What is gravitas? Seriousness and importance of manner causing feelings of respect and trust in others. As a leader, this is very, very important. Then we speak about executive presence, which is the ability to inspire confidence in others by standing in one's own personal power in a way that is emotionally intelligent and worthy of trust. And then we have charisma, that is a special power that some persons naturally have. Now, I'm speaking to you, colleagues, as persons who are leaders within your own organization, and also people wishing to develop leaders within your organization. And the reality is, you may be a leader with gravitas in your own setting now, but let us say you became an ambassador or you started to work with the United Nations. Then perhaps it may require a bit of stepping up a little bit more in the areas of gravitas or executive presence. So what I'm suggesting here, that it doesn't matter where you are, there's an opportunity for growth in this particular area. Now, I want to ask you this question: which is more important for you, to be liked or to be respected? I'm going to ask you to throw that into the chat for me. Oh, you think I see someone here? It's important to be liked or respected? Respected, respected, respected. Okay. Is there anybody else would like to throw in before we move on? Respected. Okay. So we can all agree that we wish to be, for the most of us, we wish to be respected. But what is our human conditioning? Our human conditioning is actually to be liked. Because at the end of the day, we really want to be liked. Even though we know for the roles we play, we want to be respected. The reality is that our conditioning is to be liked. And that is therefore something that we have to manage. And we're going to talk about this. Now, this was told to me by the founder of Taekwondo, General Che Hong Hee, when he came to Jamaica. And he said something very important. Power is important. Without power, you can't do anything. And I would like to believe that I am a student of power, that I look to understand power and apply it in such a way, certainly to build my organizations. But power is in fact important. And one of the things that will follow us throughout this webinar is this: the context is decisive. And what this means is that you're in a situation either with your peers or with your superiors, which may be different from being with members of your family. At the end of the day, we have to make a decision. So what I'm going to be doing now is sharing tools with you, but you have to ensure that you select the right tool for the right context. And that is very, very important. Now, I'm going to say some things which some people may find challenging, and it may be difficult or different based on your appropriate culture, the culture you're from. Powerful people make powerful declarations. You may have remembered what President Kennedy said in 1962. He said that America will put a man on the moon within 10 years. I believe they did it in 8. If you speak to a powerful person in your organization, he doesn't use modifiers and say, well, we're going to try and grow by 20%, or we're going to try and help 100 people in a particular area. They make powerful declarations. And that is what we expect from our people. And we recognize oftentimes the level at which a person is when we are speaking with them. If they're not powerful in their declarations, if they're waffling, then we say to ourselves, oh, these are not high power people. Another point I want to share is that powerful people make powerful requests. When we look at other organizations where people get donations of $1 million or more, it meant that that leader could go to another leader and say, I need $1 million for my alma mater, for my old school. And then they get it. And my question, therefore, to you is, how powerful are your requests? In your organization, do you settle for average? Do you settle for a small amount? And just as in negotiating, the more powerful your request is, the greater the likelihood of it. Now, every time I do this workshop, I ask persons to tell me whether they could be asking more of their team. And in every single case, they tell me, yes, I could be asking more, but there are stops. They maybe don't feel that the persons may give them more, or maybe their confidence might be lacking, so they don't ask for as much as they can. And my request of everyone here, my powerful request, is that you ask more for your team. If you're asking for $1 million growth in sales for this month, ask for 2 million. Create such a powerful feeling that they can gravitate to what it is that you're requesting and move in action for it. Now, the other point is a bit of a controversial one, I know. Don't explain. But when you explain, you get into too much details, you actually give away your power. And I'm going to give an example of what happened in my country a couple of years ago. The commissioner of police, who actually was a friend of mine, he was asked to speak at an event. I was a master of ceremonies. And at the same time, there was a sort of a scandal where the police had actually bought ammunition from someone in the USA, and they were not registered. So it created a problem. So did he run away from the speaking engagement? No, let me share with you how he handled it. So when I invited him up to speak, he said, he speaks in a very staccato fashion. I know what you're thinking, and I'm going to deal with it right away. The matter with the police buying the ammunition from the wrong source, it was wrong. We shouldn't have done it, and we won't do it again. And I thought, wow, my jaw was on my chest. I said, that is a powerful person. He made an apology. Yes, he won't do it again. But he didn't go into the details. And very, very importantly, he did not blame someone else. He didn't blame someone further down, or the approval process was wrong or it didn't go through. He didn't do that. He accepted responsibility and he said it won't happen again. And for me, that was a most powerful expression of power. Now, there are a few things that powerful people never do. They never appear desperate. They do things on their own time, and often they pause before speaking. When a hurried person jumps in and say, "No, no, that is wrong, that didn't happen," that doesn't work. But when you pause, you compose yourself, you don't appear rushed, and you deliver your point, that works at every level. And therefore, when your supervisor, your leader sees you operating that way, immediately you will lift in their estimation. Now, there's a lot of talk about charisma and gravitas. I tend to think of it as a continuum. The salesperson may have charisma, they may be very charming, they charm the ladies, they charm the gentlemen, and they're able to get the order. But what you tend to find is that the leader in the organization, the CEO, the general manager, the chairman, will have more gravitas. He comes across more powerfully. He comes across as someone who is in charge. So we need to recognize two things. That one, charisma and gravitas are very useful and important. It is based on a continuum. And then sometimes we flip between one and the other. Imagine you're going to a beach event and you're having fun, and then the chairman comes all with all gravitas. It actually works if he's a little bit more cheerful and friendly and speaking with everyone. So we want to think of charisma and gravitas as a continuum. And from time to time, you consciously decide how it is that you're going to go forward. And there are various elements of gravitas: confidence, authenticity, being an effective communicator, speaking concisely without using crutch words like or and being a very, very good listener. As they say, we have two ears and one mouth. They should be used in that proportion. And very, very important, poise under pressure. And of course, one has to be professional. And a lot of your power actually stems from your knowledge and your expertise. And then we expect our leaders to be strategic thinkers and having emotional intelligence, which is simply meaning understanding how your words, your behaviors has impacts on other persons. Now, there's a very important area that I want to move at. It is the four pillars. And the four pillars of gravitas and executive presence is first mindfulness. We have to be conscious of what we do and when we do it, what exactly that we do to create this image of an executive presence, what we say, and how we look. So I'm going to go into these four pillars, which is really the core of the presentation. Firstly, mindfulness. It is a mental state characterized by focused attention on the present moment without judgment or distractions. Now, a lot of times we tend to operate on remote. We continue just doing what we normally do, not recognizing the impact. But mindfulness is recognizing, all right, I'm speaking to the chairman of the company. I'm feeling somewhat tense and maybe a bit excited. So let me calm down. Let me use breathing techniques, breathing 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, to control my breathing so I do not look hard in front of the chairman. Or a staff member does something that gets you very upset, and you want to say, okay, I know that I'm feeling upset. I am I feel my heart rate beating. I feel that I'm moving towards blowing my top or shouting. I recognize this. Let me start to control myself.
Excuse
And you
me,
will
Robert.
find that if you do that,
Mr. Robert.
yes.
I just wanted to ask if, oh, yes, it's okay now. Because it was stuck earlier to like and respected screen.
Okay, I'm not quite sure that I got that. So could you repeat, please, or put it in the chat?
No, actually, I just wanted to ask earlier if are you trying to move your presentation because it was stuck to like and respected screen earlier.
Oh, it's the slide is not moving.
But actually now it's on the what is mindfulness.
Oh, it's still on mindfulness. All right, thank you. I will move it along once again. So we are still on mindfulness, and what is very important is that mindfulness helps you to reduce stress. It improves your concentration and your overall well-being. In the business setting, mindfulness helps you to make the right decision at the right time. So there are various techniques, and I had a workbook that I'm sharing with everyone that you will see some of these things. And one of the things we recommend that you practice is that every day for 5 or 10 minutes, you sit and you imagine or think exactly what you're doing. What are you feeling? What are my thoughts right now? And the more you practice being mindful, it means that you can be more in control of yourself, your actions, and your emotions. So we're now on the slide of imposter syndrome. Now, this is again something very natural. This is
Robert,
the, yes,
could you please try to play your presentation because it's still in what is mindfulness?
it's still on mindfulness.
Yes.
Okay, bear with me one moment, please. Are you seeing imposter syndrome now?
Yes, actually, but it was not playing. You need to, you know.
Okay. Are you seeing imposter syndrome?
Yes.
All right. So we want to talk a moment about imposter syndrome. We have to understand that it is normal, and you want to note when you're feeling this. Now, if you are feeling imposter syndrome, you want to put a point on it to determine that I'm feeling imposter syndrome because I may be with persons who are more senior, or I may be in a situation that is the first time I'm meeting with this group of people. There are could be many reasons, but you want to identify it for yourself. And what you do is that you reflect on your achievements. You recognize that you have done a number of things in your life, and you want to celebrate your successes. You also want to develop a support system that these may be people who you rehearse your presentation with, whom you have your discussions with before you go into meetings, so that you feel supported. And what's most important is that you challenge negative self talk. Yes? To say, all right, I'm feeling negative, but this is what I have done, what I can do. And you want to ask yourself, well, what is the worst that could happen? And I think also very, very useful is that we document our achievements by recognizing these are the things that I've done. You have the certificates. Maybe you have been honored. You may have been on in the newspapers. You have a copy of that. And what this thing does is build up your confidence. But the most important thing to deal with the imposter syndrome is what we call the 5 P's. Proper preparation prevents poor performance. And this is very important. So I've now moved to what you do. And I trust that's the slide that you're seeing, what you do. And when you're interacting with persons,
Robert, I'm sorry. Your slide's still on the imposter syndrome. It was not playing.
all right, are you seeing eye contact now?
Yes.
Okay. So I think maybe I'll have to keep it out of presentation mode. So eye contact is very important. It shows respect, first of all. Two, it shows that you're paying attention and you're listening. And no leader can really be trusted if you're not making eye contact. Similarly, you're speaking with persons, you don't want to be wearing sunglasses that they can't see your eyes. Your eyes are your window to your soul. So if they are able to see your eyes, then they can see whether you're genuinely smiling and if you are someone that can in fact be trusted. Then there's the body language. The thing that we as leaders we have to repeat, rather we have to recognize. So in this photo, you see one person, the lady in the red dress, red blouse. She may be saying, "Come on, I'm impatient. I'm waiting on you." The person on the left with his arms open, that's also a sign of gravitas and being in charge by having your arms open, friendly, you're relaxed. The gentleman with his arms folded may be suggesting that he's not buying it and he has a little bit of stiffness in his personality. So one of the things we always want to do is to be able to read the settings, and then what it means then is that given the context, you adjust accordingly. Now, gestures is a very, very important thing. We know Tony Robbins. Again, when you have somebody who is speaking and their arms are wide or they're taking up more space, that is a classic sign of confidence. You see that in the animal kingdom. You see that with monkeys, baboons, gorillas. They expand their space to show their power and their authority. And it's the very same thing that happens with human beings. So for gestures, we want to use big movements. It must be compatible with the thoughts being expressed. It must reinforce the point and really ultimately helps you to feel more confident. And then another important element is what you say. Going into a meeting, one of the first things you want to do to show your confidence is to acknowledge persons. Even if you don't know people in the room, you go, you shake hands, you say hello to the person sitting beside you, and you sit around the table, not necessarily around the side if you can sit around the tables. But when you go in with your shoulders shrunk and sitting on the chair, not saying anything to anyone, it doesn't show executive presence. It shows an absence of gravitas. And when you speak, or rather when the speaker is speaking, you want to make eye contact. Show confidence that you're listening. And again, you don't want to fidget always looking around who's coming in the room now. Again, that takes away from your position of confidence. And as I spoke earlier, expand your posture. Of course, not getting into anyone else's space, but being open, being confident, being stretched a bit, it shows that you are more in a powerful space. And when someone is speaking in you lean in somewhat. These are just some of the things that we have to do. Now, when we use the use of voice, some of you may remember Margaret Thatcher. Now, what is interesting to note is that before she went into politics, she spoke in a very high-pitched way. She had a high-pitched voice. And then the persons with whom were her handlers in politics said, no, 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 that will not work. You need a deeper, more resonant voice. And she practiced with the benefit of coaches. So she spoke slower, deeper, and with a lot more gravitas. And the rest is history. Then, of course, pauses and silence. When you pause, you actually have persons waiting to listen to you. But when you run going on like that, it robs your power. So you want to use silence. Silence is very good for persons who are presenting or speaking. It shows that you're thinking, you're in command, and you're not just shooting from the hip. Humor is useful, but the type of humor is important. Don't use humor to put yourselves down. If you listen to powerful leaders, they will use humor, they will make jokes, but they will rarely put themselves down because you don't want to be put in a situation where people are actually laughing at you. Now, if you have a real lot of confidence, then maybe that could work. But generally, my recommendation is that your humor ought not to be at the expense of anyone, nor at the expense of yourself. And I think that's a very important point for us to remember. Pitch, vocal variety, rate, and projection. I'm going to ask that you look at videos of Louis Farrakhan. You may not agree with his politics or his beliefs, but as a speaker, he's exceptional. Bill Clinton is another one that is also very exceptional in how they speak, how they project, how they get the attention. And what is quite interesting about how Bill Clinton speaks is that he may be speaking to 1 million people on television or 100 people in an audience, but you feel as if he's speaking to you. And this has to do with the eye contact, with focusing on the persons, even though he may be putting his attention to various persons in the room. Crutch words and pause fillers are again things that we don't want to practice. It robs you of credibility. It makes you less trustworthy, and it hampers your message. Your message does not come across very smoothly, and therefore it works against the power that you're trying to create for yourselves. Now, the third element is how you look, and this is critical. If you look on a picture here of Don Draper from the series Mad Men, you will see well dressed, he's well groomed. Many will say he's a handsome fellow. He takes up space, but when you look, you get the image of, oh, this is a powerful person. This is a person in control. You may even suspect that he may be slightly arrogant. But it's very important for us to craft the image that what we want. Whatever your hairstyle you choose, let it be consistent with being well groomed. Whatever your attire, ensure that your attire fits well and you present yourself well. This show was done in the 50s, so you'll notice that the cigarette is ever present. Certainly won't be the case these days. And posture, back straight. I remember presenting at a conference in Dubai, and the sheiks were present. And when they came, there was a lady who, there's no doubt she would have been someone very, very powerful. But her posture, how she walked, her confidence, it was more than confidence. She was very, very memorable. And you realize that she must have been a very powerful person. So your posture is what people see from a half a mile away when they first see you, and they start to make their impression of you. So posture, both ladies, gentlemen, it is extremely important because this tends to project exactly who you are in the world. And properly fitted clothing. They say you should dress for the position that you want, not the one that you have. And you can see baggy clothing, pants too long, everything very unstructured, the suit unpressed as opposed to the person on the right. You can clearly see of these two persons who is likely to be the one who is more in charge, and I therefore commend you. Now, ladies are typically don't have this challenge. This is generally more for the gentlemen, but this is certainly what I'd ensure that you would communicate to those whom you lead. And we, of course, spoke about this for ladies. I much prefer pearls to costume jewelry. It makes you stand out and, of course, makes you look more classy. And in attire, generally, we want to substitute faddish things and trendy things for really classy and classic things. Yes, it may suggest that you may be a little older than what you are, but consider the impression that what you want. And at the end of the day, dress as if you are important. If everybody's wearing short sleeves, then maybe you have on a blazer. If everybody's wearing a blazer, then maybe you wear a shirt and tie. But these are some of the things that is very important, and you will never get a second chance to make a good first opinion. And then, of course, you want to obey the dress code for the event. In a lot of societies, this is not happening as it should. But if you're going to stand out, this is one of the things you want to do. And we want to look our best, of course, depending on what your culture, because I know we have persons here from India, the UK, Asia here. So you want to look your best as far as what is culturally appropriate. Now, let's spend the remaining time looking at difficult situations. You have people who are interrupting and who are running over you. This is very important that you establish that if you're speaking, you are speaking. But we'll have to be careful because, again, the context. In some cases, you may say, "Excuse me, I'm speaking." In other times, you may say, "Excuse me, I'm speaking." The tone is very critical. Or I may say in meetings, even my board meetings where I have my chair people and my chairman and board members, and if they're jumping and so on, let me complete my thoughts first. So I'm saying it very respectfully, but I'm not giving way to being bombarded, so to speak. In other cases, they may say, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, I'm on the floor. I'm still on the floor. I'm still on the floor. Again, it depends on the setting and where. If it's adversarial, I may say, "Excuse me, I'm still on the floor." If it's in a more social environment where we all are friends, I may say, "I'm still on the floor." In other case, and I don't usually do this because it could be seen as slightly insulting, but I may say, "Okay, go ahead. It seems like you really need to share." So I keep that one in my back pocket, but I typically don't use it. Or in other cases, okay, I'll come to you in a minute. It may be a workshop. People are excited, so I don't want to shoot them down, but I still need to maintain a level of order. So say, hold on, I will come to you in a minute, or I'll come to you in a minute. Again, the context is decisive, the tone is critical. And if you find persons continually butting in on you, then you may want to have a separate conversation to the side. Now, there are persons who, again, try to scuttle your power, try to reduce your power, and they come with what I call one-upmanship questions. And I use the title here. You're presenting on whatever it is, and they say, "Do you still beat your wife?" I just use this as an example. Because a question like that, how do you respond? Do you say no? Oh, so you stop beating your wife? So they're saying this to throw you in a tizzy. One of the things you may do, and again, depending on the situation, you may say something like, you may ignore the question and the questioner and say, next question, please, turning away from the person. And that usually shuts them up. Or you may want to be cheeky and say, well, perhaps you should ask her yourself. And what I use sometimes is when they come at me with a silly question, I said, tell me, how do you like me to answer that? And that sort of throws the ball back in their court, and it's hard for them to respond. Or what I may say, again, in a cheeky manner, question and answer starts in 15 minutes. I'll take your question then. And depending again on the situation and the context, I may say it with a smile, I may say it with a serious face. And sometimes I just smile and shake my head, almost ignoring the person. And then that usually gets a bit of a laughter. And if I want to be a little bit more adversarial, I'll say irrelevant. Next question, please. But I typically don't use number 6. But these are interesting. You will get them in your notes, and you can choose which ones. And of course, you want to practice with a friend, because both when you're being run over and in this situation, you want to be able to respond quite fluently and fluidly. And then there's a technique, mirroring and leading. Now, if you have customers who tend to be very adversarial, let us say in a customer service department, the technique here, mirroring and leading, and Tony Robbins speaks of this one, is you match the person's volume and tone for 2 responses, then you go an octave lower, and then lower again, and lower until you reach conversational tone, then you address the issue. The person may say, so was my goods not delivered? And you say, excuse me, you didn't get your goods? No, I didn't get my goods. Oh, you didn't get it. What? How can I help you? I need to get my goods. Oh, really? All right, let me speak with the customer service people and see what happens. I need to get it today. We do our very best. We do our very best. That is an example of what can happen. So you match the person's tone. If they're shouting, you may not shout at them, but you speak more loudly, and then you catch them at the same level the next time. Then the third time you go down a bit. The fourth time you go down a bit, and then by that time you would have calmed down the person a bit, and then you can now seek intelligently to solve the problem. Believe me, it's a very useful technique, and I have not used it and it not work. Then in some of our societies, we do have people who come with a physical approach to you. Now, this may not always work, but it's an approach. What you don't want to be is begging for them not to rob you or do anything. I used to have a martial arts school, so these are techniques that I would use and teach. You start to stand with your weight balanced on both feet, one foot slightly ahead, and you maintain eye contact with the aggressor. Very, very important for you to control your breathing. Breathing in, breathing out. You expand your chest, big gestures. What happening, sir? How can I help you today? When you speak in a commanding, not a condescending tone. Sir, you're not supposed to be over here. How can I help you? And then in all of this, you're trying to figure out the other person. What are their intentions? Are they going to come and rob you? Do they have other evil intent? Or they're just trying to be intimidating? And what you don't want to do is to show weakness, because I've never seen a situation where someone is begging for their life that it worked if they had other intentions. You really don't want to back down. And in many cases, you find that you will, in fact, have a positive response to this. Now, Ian, I have come to the end of my presentation with perhaps only a minute to spare, but I'd like you to consider what I have shared here today and to see if there's anything that you'd like to take from it, if you would put into the chat as to what are your next steps, what, if anything, you'd want to take from this. And then, of course, we'll have the Q&A afterwards. But do spend a minute or two and think through what we've shared at a record pace. And if there's anything that you would want to take from this and practice in your life to build your gravitas and build your executive presence. I see a very interesting question in the chat, and we will
Yes, they want me
put
to
that up
share.
during the Q&A. But I love to see a few persons put in what they want to practice. I hope there's something that you practice. Okay, I also see another very interesting question that comes up. All right, so nobody wants to tell me their next steps, so perhaps we could go to the Q&A at this point. Okay.
I think Sushant already have a next step here.
Okay, so let me go to a couple of the questions here regarding mindfulness. What's the perfect route to take when the state of mindfulness is total opposition or disagreement with the person you're negotiating with? The first thing to remember is you want to maintain control. When you're maintaining control, you're in a better able to respond. So the first thing you want to recognize is, okay, I may be feeling stressed because I'm losing out in the negotiation, and this may mean millions of dollars for my company. So you start by taking breathing, and then give a moment of silence. That the person also wonders, okay, I am pushing back. Are they accepting my role? And when you're slowing down, you may say, well, we are at a different place here. I would like to have your business, but we are totally different. What can you, how can you recommend that we come closer together, that we do business? What I would typically do is use mindfulness to calm myself down. Then I'll start to pose questions, because I would assume that that person is meeting with you because they also have an interest in doing business, but they may be very unreasonable. So you start to ask the questions at the same time, maintaining your composure, not being flustered. Don't let them feel that you are being desperate. And that is what I would do. And you can put back in the chat if you think that's useful. Now, I see a very interesting question here. How do you change decade-long habits to get gravitas? This is interesting because the decade-long habits that you change are within yourselves, because you've been conditioned a particular way by your society, how to operate, by your family, by your company, how to operate. And then you're working in your society, and your society has a certain way to do things. So what it does mean is that you'd have to do quite a bit of practice on your own, because if you don't practice very much, when you get into the situation, you're going to do the default. Like you're teaching your kid to do something, they learn something the wrong way at school by their friends. They come home, you correct them. When they go back to school, they may slip into that. So one of the things you want to do is to practice it yourself and do role plays, and for members of your team. So you start to trying to change yourself. Then you try and change the members of your team. So you start with your core members of team. Let us say maybe your leadership team, then your supervisory team. So you start them, and then you practice this, and then you explain the the different way how to do this. Now with ladies typically in many societies have challenges. You know, they're the ones who are asked to take the minutes in a meeting just because they're females, or to get coffee or tea for the men. So those are more entrenching that you'd want to change. And there are strategies you may want to say, no, John, let me show you where the tea is and you can help yourself. Or you have someone else bring the tea into the meeting room, or you work out someone else who could in fact take the minutes. This again comes to mindfulness. You have to think, okay, what is likely to happen, and think ahead. How can I remove the situation that is affecting my perception of power? And then we see here, we
Yes.
basically understand the behavioral aspects to deal with people. And that is true. And this is where mindfulness is important, because we may actually know. Yes, we may have learned it, we may have studied it, we may have gone to million workshops like this. However, what do we put it into practice? Even the other day in a board meeting, I realized that I started to explain too much and I felt my power go. And I look and I say, okay, what I should have said was this. So you plan ahead and then you reflect after. How can I do this differently next time? Okay, I got caught this time. How can I do it differently? And that will work. And of course, breathing is a key corollary to mindfulness, because this is how you take control. This is how you control your fight or flight mechanism. All right, so I see a question here. In today's fast-paced and dynamic professional landscape, what are some practical strategies individuals can implement to develop gravitas and extend it? All right. It's unfortunately that we're pretty much to the end of this, but in a virtual or remote work settings, it comes back to the same thing. Don't allow yourself to be trod over. Ensure that you dress appropriately, that you are a professional in the professional meetings, and you practice just a number of things that we've shared here. It will work remotely, and it will take some time till you start to get a message across that you are a senior person. So, like, I always use backgrounds for my meetings. I remember I walked on a meeting and I'm looking in the background and all I'm seeing is a bit of cobweb blowing in the AC. All I could focus on was a cobweb. That didn't enhance their professionalism. So I always use a backdrop. A. B. I ensure that I am appropriately attired for the event. I ensure that I also have prepared and have the information that I need. And if I do this consistently, I'm likely to have an improvement in how I may be perceived as it relates to gravitas and executive presence. And most importantly, when speaking in a meeting, one has to be prepared. Sometimes people start talking and then they start to think. No, you want to ensure you have your points. You work it out, you ensure what the counters may be. So when you speak, you're speaking confidently, you're speaking directly, and you're speaking with focus. And this way, even on the screen, as I'm saying here, it's going to be hard to challenge because I'm focused, I'm saying what I know, and I'm getting my point across. And I'm making eye contact. I hope that helps.
So there is another question.
Yes, and I see someone
I
that I know.
imagine the
And
octave
matching the octave of the
control
conversation
the situation.
is very important. As I said, if they started high, then you take it down, match them, and then you can deal with that situation. All right, I think we are at the end, and thank you, John. Thank you for being here and staying to the end. It's an area that I'm passionate about. As I said, I'm a student of power, and I'm happy to share this far and wide, and hopefully that this information will be seen as relevant and will be used.
Thank you so much for this wonderful powerful presentation, Robert, and thank you for answering those questions of our attendees. So before we wrap up today, I have some important updates to share for everyone. So this session is being recorded and will be accessible on our ITC YouTube channel. Feel free to revisit or share it with your network. And if you're not already an ITC member, attending this webinar qualifies you for a complimentary membership. Take advantage of this opportunity. And lastly, you will receive a participation certificate for today's webinar. Keep an eye on your email, everyone, for more details. So, do you have any final thoughts to share about your presentation, Robert?
Do you have the participants workbook to share?
I'm sorry.
The participants workbook?
Actually, we will send the participants workbook on the email as well for
Okay.
these participants. Okay, I will take down note all of the list of our attendees today.
Okay. And I
Mhm.
thank you all for attending.
Yes, thank you so much. So also, if any attendees wish to contact you regarding this presentation, could you please type in your email address as well in the chat box? Thank you so much for this one, Mr. Robert. So I will be leaving also my email address here in the chat box for those who are not yet a members of the International Trade Council. Please feel free to leave us a message in my inbox as well. One moment. Okay. So again, a big thank you to you, Mr. Robert Scott. I really appreciate you with this wonderful presentation, sharing your expertise with us today. And of course, thank you so much to all our participants for joining us today. We really appreciate your active participation and your all insightful questions. So don't forget to check your email for follow-up information, and aside from that, including your certificate as well. Have a fantastic afternoon, everyone, and we look forward to welcoming you back to our future webinars. Goodbye for now. Thank you, Mr. Robert. Have a good one.